everyone. In our last class, we discussed about the cognitive process subtopic of attention. Today we are going to see about the topic of perception. Before going to the topic, you can find the previous classes in the below description regarding the introduction of psychology and biological basis of behavior. Let's start our today's topic. Here, before going to topic, we can see the small image. We can compare two persons, how they are perceiving the same thing. Here we can observe these objects. From this person, he perceives the thing as four things, 1, 2, 3 and 4. But according to, he compares this object as three things, only 1, 2 and 3. The objects in this image are the same, but the person who is observing from different areas in the different angle was different. Thus it is really confusing now. Thus it is the called as perception. Definition of perception. According to R.E. Silverman in 1976, he defined perception as an individual's awareness aspect of behavior, for it is the way each person processes the raw data he receives from the environment into meaningful pattern. Whatever he observes from the environment, he converts the data in mind into some meaningful message. That is called as a perception. Let us see about the principles of perception. There are mainly 5 principles of perception. Principle of figure-ground relationship, principle of grouping, principle of context, principle of contrast and principle of adaptability. Coming to the principle of figure-ground relationship. Here, there is a relationship between the figure and the ground. The figure is perceived in relationship to its background. Then, principles of grouping. Here, the objects are perceived meaningfully when they are grouped together. Again, these principles of grouping subdivided into different categories. Principle of proximity, principle of similarity, principle of continuity, principle of closure and principle of symmetry. Coming to the principle of proximity. Principle of proximity in the sense, here objects appears which are nearer to each other can be perceived meaningfully by grouping them. If we consider two parallel lines, they are grouped together, it indicates the meaningful pattern. Next, coming to the principle of similarity, it is the tendency to perceive the objects of similar size, shape and color. For example, if we take into consideration, here we can see the square type of things or circular objects. This may be different by perceiving from the different area. It is easily able to perceive. Then coming to the principle of continuity, what happens here? The stimulus extends in the same direction. For example, if we see, it may be continuously like this or it may be different like this. The same which is continuous, that comes under the principle of continuity. Then coming to the principle of closure, it is the closure the pattern or fill in the sensory gaps. For example, the pattern was continuing like this and some space happened and again continues like this. Then again space, then continues like this. It forms as a whole pattern that comes under the principle of closure. Then coming to the principle of symmetry. Principle of symmetry in the sense, here objects perceived as a group. For example, in mathematics or calculations or whatever we want to particularly specify something, it may be indicated in the brackets or we will make them in a flower brackets. Like that we will explain. That is the principle of symmetry. Then coming to the principle of context. In this principle of context, the examiner may award the higher marks to the same answer book in pleasant context than in the unpleasant one. Then coming to the principle of contrast, here what happens? The stimuli in the sharp contrast to the nearby stimuli. Whatever the thing was there, it helps in the identifying the situation. For example, in this principle of context, here we can see the small circle surrounded by the larger circles, or the rounded one, bigger one in the middle, and we can consider the small things around it. Here we can identify the difference. Here the small circle surrounded by the larger ones, and here the larger one surrounded by the small ones. That is the principle of contrast. Well, coming to the principle of adaptability, it considers in the change of the behavioral pattern. How does different factors affects our perception? First one was the sense organs. Sense organs, how does it affect? The sense organs, receptors with the stimuli act and sensory neurons transmit that nerve current from the transmitters. For example, if we observe the eye, here in the eye, what happens? If the cones whatever was not there, if the cones are not developed in the retina, we consider the eye as an example. Here, if the cones are not formed in the retina, the color may not be perceived. Coming to the brain, depends on the functioning capacity of both the sensory and association areas of the brain. For example, if any damage to the eye, it causes the blindness, or we cannot able to see through our vision. Next, coming to memory images of past experience. For example, if the child perceives some animal, for example, if he sees a cow, he will have some idea the cow structure will be like this, and later on, after some days, if he take into some zoo and if we show some lion or tiger, whatever he perceives the cow structure, if we ask him what was that, he may say that it is a cow. Like that, whatever the memory images he kept in his mind, it will be come into consideration. Coming to the personal interest, if we are having more interest on one particular topic, we will try to keep the interest most of the time on that. For example, if we are having a habit of stamp collection, we will quickly notice. Then needs and desires. These needs and desires, if we are having different beliefs, opinions and cultural ideas. Then nature of the stimuli, the size, background and novelty, and acquired interest. These are all the factors affecting the perception. Then causes of inaccurate perception. First of all, the defective functioning of the sense organs. For example, some of the sensory defects like myopia, deafness and inaccurate perception, it causes if we can't able to perceive the thing as a real, thus it leads to inaccurate perception. Then inadequate stimulus. Inadequate stimulus in the sense any weak light or soft sound, it is difficult to perceive correctly. Too many stimuli at one time. If continuously if we are facing continuously any different stimulus at the same time, we cannot able to perceive the thing at a particular time. For example, if the presence of loud noise at a particular situation, then it is difficult to perceive the call of the patient. It is difficult to attend the call from the patient. Then poor health. Our sense organs, if it may function improperly due to the illness, it causes the inaccurate perception. Then limited attention. Limited attention in the sense, if we try to apprehend more things at a time, we are liable to the inaccurate perception. Then figure merges in the ground. Nurse learns to perceive the signs of illness or wellness in the patients only when she learns what they are. Before itself, she need to know what are the signs and symptoms of the illness. Thus, she will be able to provide the affectionate care to the patients. Coming to the guidance, if it is inaccurate, when we do not know what to pursue, that is the guidance. This is about perception. In our next video, I'll brief about the process of learning. I'm going to come up with more classes like this. Please do like, share, subscribe and comment. Thank you. Thank you.